Welcome, everyone. Today is the last National Parks Arts Foundation podcast interview we're doing on our Toast to the Arts and Parks show for 2024. You know, we'll be back in January. So, very excited to have trumpeter Delbert Anderson join us. Him and his trio are in Hawai'i Volcanoes National Park now. They're in the art house. They basically just arrived after doing some performances around Hawaii, and so excited to have him here. Go to his website. I'm serious. His music is incredible. It's delbertanderson.com. The link is in the episode notes, and I'm excited to chat with him. And I think when you talk about Native American music, a lot of people don't think jazz, but I think you're proving them wrong, right, Delbert? Welcome.
Yeah, it's a very common question of how I sort of picked up this idea of jazz and improvisation and being Native American. But something like that goes way back to the boarding schools. A lot of the indigenous people who went through boarding school, that's how they were introduced to Western instruments such as trumpet, clarinet, and so forth. And so if you sort of look back in history, there's a lot of indigenous musicians who really strived and went forward in classical music and marching music, in jazz music. And so you can sort of look back in history and sort of see where where everyone is at in terms of the time frame and those who are have been just really dedicated to the instruments. And so when I am asked the question of how I was brought into jazz, it goes back to when I first heard a trombone player come. They had this sort of assembly, and this jazz trio came to our school to demonstrate some of the instruments. And at the very end of the assembly, this trombone player turned his music stand around and he started playing, like he wasn't looking at any music. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And at the end of the show, I remember him saying that music comes from inside us. It doesn't come from the sheet music. And he said that what I was doing was called improvisation. And so that was enough to hook me. And at the time, it was, I believe, fourth grade. We got to go and choose our instruments. So I actually went to go try and play trombone, but I wasn't able to make a note on it. And so they asked me to go to the trumpet section, and I played like two little notes on the trumpet, and everyone said, "Hey, you're a trumpet player," and so that's kind of how I got in. But when after doing a little research, there are many indigenous musicians that sort of had maybe not necessarily had a choice on what they wanted to play, but that was all a part of the boarding school, sort of that military mindset, was everyone was going to learn an instrument at that time. So it goes back, and it even goes further back to our elders who kind of talk about the heartbeat or the drum beat. And this drum beat, when you listen to it, it's just mimicking the heart. And if you think about it, that sort of rhythm or that is going on, it's actually like a swing, it swings. So I think naturally it just sort of just works with everyone. And the idea of improvisation and just the other values that jazz has, such as like community, respect, collaboration, it all, I feel like we as indigenous people have had all those traits for so long, just because that's kind of how they would run our tribes and cultures. So for me, it was very easy to get into this instrument and just be very expressive through it. And so yeah, I always I'm always asked that, like, how
Yeah, well, because everyone expects you to play a flute, another wind instrument, right? So that's also part of it. And there's a syncopation with your music too, and that's going to be that jazz has that syncopation, that just and a little spontaneity with it. And what I love about your music, you've got a very fresh sound, yet it also harkens to way back when, right? To even the birth of jazz, which is very American, right? But
Hmm.
you bring in this fresh sound. You've got, I don't know, it just feels very fresh to me. But then there's a little bit of hip hop in there. There's a little bit of rap in some of the songs too. So I
Right.
think you're saying, hey, let's just do what we want here. But there's a lot of it's amazing to me how your music takes you on a journey, but has that little bit of syncopation, which I think is what is kind of the glue to your sound. Just me personally, that's kind of how I feel with it.
Yeah, totally. And with the sort of the quartet that we have right now, it's everyone is really keyed on individualism, so
Hmm.
everyone is just simply being themselves and doing what they love. And the our idea of collaboration is that we take whatever comes in, and we try to not maybe not necessarily blend it together, but we make it work. And I think we have always keep our ears open and our try to keep our minds free on the music doesn't always have to go a certain way, and we try to be very free with it.
Hmm.
Although a lot of times the way that sort of the music process works with us is I'll bring in a melody, and because I don't write out the piano part, drum parts, or the bass part. I just kind of bring my melody and put it in the middle, and everyone sort of just chips in. They do their part
Sweet.
on what they feel from the melody. And so that way it's a more true collaboration than sort of me just writing everything for everybody. And I think that's what the art is all about, is about that whole connection, and the connection to my culture, because a lot of the melodies I use, they're very similar to these set of songs called the spinning songs, which are songs that social songs that basically teach a lesson or a life lesson, that kind of thing. And had a little chat with some of our Diné elders, and they said anyone can make a spinning song, like
Mm-hmm.
anyone. They don't have to be from the tribe. As long as it's being helpful, or it's
Hmm.
very like it could be like more informative. I always kind of joke around and say, like, a spinning song could be something as simple as, hey, keep your elbows off the table, and you would just simply just reiterate that, but also put it to song and drums. And so yeah, it can be it's very open. And the idea of this spinning, one of the elders said, think of it as like a tornado, where you're sucking up everything around it, like the environment and all that, and it's jumbling and
Yeah.
back and forth. And they said it pops out, or when it goes up the
Hmm.
funnel, it lets it go. And so, like, it's basically when you put like Khalil Brown, he kind of has a reggae background. Evan Suter has a funk background, but also he's well in many genres. And Robert Muller, who's very contemporary in his approach to piano, he did a lot of hip hop stuff and jazz fusion things, like back in New York and everything. And so you put all those together, but you kind of with this sort of Diné spinning song in the
Hmm.
middle, and it mixes it up and it shoots it out. So that's kind of what I tell people when they ask, what's your music? Because I think right now everyone calls our music jazz, just because it has a improvisational aspect to it. Because
Hmm.
and so because when someone says jazz, like, I think they're thinking more about like the standards, like Fly Me to the Moon, or to
Yeah,
create
exactly.
things,
Duke Ellington and yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it's the jazz is kind of a lot of sort of older forefathers, they never really liked the term jazz, because everyone was simply being themselves and putting their culture and at that time and moment.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people today kind of sort of uh don't really grasp what was going on then. And I feel, I mean, it's important to preserve and everything, but really all the forefathers were doing were, those were their songs, and they were putting it
Hmm.
forward. And something similar that, our elders told me was, they made their songs that because during their time it might have been a different time, so they were a little more sacred with things. And but now, it's a little different because now it's almost like we need more youth to be interested in our cultures. uh,
Yeah.
so that it can continue on. And so when I asked them about fusing Dinesh spinning songs with, jazz, funk, and all of these things, they said I had to do what I had to do in my moment. And
Mhm.
so in a way, sort of like gave me like approval to basically sort of bring these songs back in a more contemporary way, and in hopes that maybe the youth or those coming up in the next generation will have interest in it just because it's
Mhm.
dressed a little differently. So yeah, it all kind of goes
That
goes
makes sense,
goes
though.
with
I mean, in
yeah.
Louisiana, I went to a folk festival in Natchitoches, which is the oldest settlement, French settlement, and their folk festival had different tribes as well. And then, I mean, music, they had Victorian era music where people were dressed up all Victorian and dancing, and it was all, I mean, blues, they had everything, obviously Cajun and Zydeco, right? And some of
Mhm.
these bands were family bands. I mean, just like I felt so lucky. I still tear up about this experience because it's like you're not going to hear this again. There's this, they're just almost howling and singing. Just there was a gentleman, who I talk about him all the time. He was in his 90s, and you just couldn't believe this. But then around the corner be the younger generation coming in with Cajun and Zydeco, with rap in between, hip hop, just like what you're talking about. And so this younger generation, they were able to carry the torch, and then they would go in and, once, the younger audience was catching into it, they will go in and do something very traditional, and then kind of, so it was a way of, just a way of keeping it alive. And that's what I was saying about your music. You can hear this echo of old, and but very, very fresh, which I think is awesome for people to kind of open their ears a little bit and get us all excited. But you were talking about Danae, and um, I want people to understand. So that's Navajo, right? So when you're talking about different tribes, if someone was, let's see, Kumeyaay, from, maybe from California, they would be able to do this too with you, and that would be okay with your elders.
Yeah, and like I said, yeah. So Dinesh is kind of what we refer
I'm
to.
not pronouncing it quite right. Danae. Sorry, I'll
Yeah,
get there.
and Navajo is more of the sort of federally recognized tribe.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you go to the reservation and speak with the Navajo, they'll call themselves Diné people.
Danae.
And Diné
Okay.
actually means the people basically.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so the elders are, I think a lot of it's so funny because I think like the media really depicts stuff and puts certain things out there, and it kind of gives everyone um it makes everyone assume like, oh, these elders are like super serious and they're super sacred, and there's that whole idea. But if you go to the elders, they're really funny. They're just great people to be around. And it's and some are a little more serious than others. But when it comes time to sort of spreading knowledge or their indigenous knowledge, they're very humble about it. And they're very generous in terms of really wanting to just talk to people like face to face. And
Hmm.
I know that's one thing they miss. But yeah, the spinning songs are, like I said, they're social. And because they were social, that's sort of why I kind of went that route. Like I don't play any of the ceremonial type songs or the sacred songs or anything like
Hmm.
that, just because, just out of respect of the culture and everything. Even though I'm from the culture, I'm still kind of
Yeah.
keeping careful because
Right, right. And but one thing I think what you're doing really good is also educating, even on this podcast right now. You're, being educational, and the music is too. But I also saw that you do some work build a band. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Build a Band is basically a crash course in putting a band together. And putting a band together, it's the same thing as putting basically a family together. And
Hmm.
what I did a while back was I started looking into my own family, and I was trying to find the characters, the values that keep us together. That what's the glue that, keeps us as a family, and obviously, like husband to wife, or wife to daughter, husband to son. There's a lot of connection there, but I went a little deeper, and as to like why do we care for one another so much. And so that program, Build a Band, it came with seven values that I kind of picked out from my own family, being, that glue that binds us together. And I implemented it in a curriculum, and I put it into this Build a Band. And so some of the first things that we learned right off the bat is sort of something like one of the first values was unconditional love, where the love that you have for one another is going to supersede anything. No matter what happens, you're still going to have that love for that person. And so we kind of slowly introduce these values into these students, and we at the same time we're like putting them together and being creative musically. I know the recent class of 2023, we went on a 5-day tour, and they
Oh,
handled
cool.
everything themselves. They had a manager. They were
Wow.
they were booking shows, and through the grant, one of the grants we received was from First People's Fund. And they were able to not only just tour, but able to get paid very, very well, as
Mm.
as being
Yeah, not like you get a free meal for playing music.
yeah. Yeah,
That needs to stop.
yeah, totally. But yeah, even and stuff like that, the things that a lot of people don't know about, like being on the road. I mean, it used to just be where musicians could go in, and the whatever they're being paid would already be given to them, and everything would be taken care of. But like some of the things that a lot of people don't realize is, I mean, just this trip, being in Hawaii, staying at the different resorts, checking into hotels, you have to have like some type of, credit, because, you look at hotel fees, resort fees, holds, all of these things like that really, musicians are probably, most of them are little like unequipped for. We talk about those things that that a lot of people don't really
The
understand. And
business side and the budgeting, the business, and it's tiring too. I mean, but I think part of the beauty of being a musician and touring is the touring part too. But the band side is really because you got different personalities and everybody has a different. So when you talk about this from a family angle, that's and sometimes being more business like in a family situation. I mean, we're a family business, and I had a band in San Diego many years ago, and boy, did
Mhm.
I learn a lot. I was like, whoa, I
Yeah,
don't know if I'll do this again, but it was
and
fun. But it was like it was like, yeah, it's like a marriage, man. That was, it was family, and you back each other up. That's like if you're performing and something goes wonky, you all come together. It's like another language, the band.
totally. And something that went a little unnoticed, like things I wasn't really like thinking about. It wasn't a part of our outcomes, but the group, the Build a Band group of last year, they actually all started hanging out together at school, and they were kind of like a clique. They were just going around. And just kind of hearing them talk, like they were like, oh, are we all meeting at Schlossky's on Wednesdays? Like they were
Cool.
doing all of these things. And I feel like a lot of those values that were kind of implemented really started to take have an effect on everyone. But also there was about 8 students. 4 of them ended up going to my alma mater, Eastern New Mexico University, to study music. and they're all there. Or there's four of them there right now, and it's just like amazing to
That's
see.
beautiful.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. You got to feel proud,
and
that is.
yeah, it's all working out, and I think it's that, that's the idea of keeping things, or the idea of the curriculum of just having that support, sort of a family system, which some teens, don't really have a family system, and I think
Mm.
those who are in it, they start to see like maybe how it might feel to be in a loving family.
That's amazing you say this because, I've done so many interviews, musician interviews over the years, and I always talk about ones that are traveling. I said, the one thing about it being a musician or a chef or a comedian, you can put them in too. You travel anywhere. Say you move to another town, all you have to do is go see a show and hook up with the local musicians, and you're going to build a family and a community. It's like immediately. It's almost like musicians take care of each other in towns. Like you could get to a town. I can't tell you how many musicians I know that like, oh, my guitar got stolen out of the car. You're like, you're not supposed to leave it in there. But somebody stole the guitar, you get into town, and some local musicians that you don't know will bring you a guitar or an amp or something, right? Is that not true? It is
That,
a
that's
universal family in a way.
Yeah, that's very true. And we just had an incident here. We had some trouble with the keyboard that was left here for us. And we needed a sort of a different type of, keyboard, electronic
Okay.
keyboard. And like I said, I was just in Hilo at the I think it's called East Hawaii Jazz and Blues Festival.
Oh,
And
cool.
I met a lot of musicians there, but I made friends with the director there, Stephen Bader. And when we needed a piano, everyone was kind of looking around saying, "Oh, I don't know if we can get one." And so I got him on the phone and asked, and like a day later, we had a piano
No way.
given
And even
to
to get
us.
one delivered, a piano.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so,
Yeah.
well, we picked it up on our way back from Honolulu, but
But that's cool.
in Hilo, yeah. But yeah, I think it's, you're right. Everyone has this. I don't want like some type of code, like people know
Mhm.
how it is on the road, and I think they get it, when someone really needs something. About 2 or 3 years ago, I got my instruments stolen from a
Oh,
hotel in Tukwila, Washington.
wow.
And I was able to find it back about a month later because another trumpet player saw my horns on Craigslist,
No
and
way. Ah,
like, so we called the police, and they set up like a fake buy, and they got
dude.
my horn back, and I had two horns that were stolen, but I was able to get them back, and it was all due to the networking that I was doing, because the gentleman who saw it, his name is John Dover, and he's in Portland. And it's just like the community really looks out for you, but you have
Mm.
to, be in that community as well, and so.
Yeah. Well, NPAF, the National Parks Arts Foundation, is like an awesome community as well. And it's cool that you're there. What inspired you to apply, and what are your goals as a band being there? Because the whole band is there. So this is like a little different,
Right.
right? Not just you and everyone's there. So it goes from the trio to
Yeah,
the quartet, right? So all of you are
right.
there.
So back in, I think it was 2022, I did a tour with the Bureau of Land Management,
Yeah, I
and
saw that on your site. Yeah,
and
cool.
part of that tour was composing, sort of like, with landscapes and being inspired by different, environments and land, basically. And so that was sort of my first attempt into composing, and really trying to understand like land formations, and how does that, apply to music, or how can it apply to music. So that, I had that whole idea, and I think the phase of it, I was still in that, land phase. And when I saw the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park was doing residencies, I thought it would be a great idea to a place to be in, where I could be inspired,
Mm.
and I don't know if you heard this, or I don't know if the word ever got out, but when I first applied, I was talking about doing something with like making a volcano suite, sort of composing of, I think, some of, like, maybe 6 of the volcanoes that are on the Big Island. I was gonna, write a suite about them. But then that whole idea kind of took a little, like, a 180, because I really started to talk with some of the elders that are here and community leaders in Hawaii, and asking them, sort of, like I asked permission from my elders to compose my songs. I
Mhm.
did the same thing. And sort of the response was a little more like, I wish someone from, our own tribe would do something like this. And in other words, it wasn't really my place to, like, sort of just
Okay.
tell the story. So, and then, that's just me. I
Mhm.
have this conversation all the time, but that's kind of, I think, is what got me into the residency, because I want to do this thing. But after speaking with, like, some of the elders, and, like I said, community leaders, I kind of understand it as, if if anyone's going to tell that story, especially of the volcanoes, it should
Mm.
be those who are more
Yeah.
connected to this land. And I have complete respect for that. And so what we're doing now is sort of, um, from the project, with the Bureau of Land Management that we did, I had a set of songs, 10 songs, that I composed with the indigenous people, about their lands and everything. So that's kind of what we're doing now, is we're just tightening all of those songs up to go into a studio later to record that album.
Mm.
And it's going to be a land healing album. So it was about the volcanoes that I was going to come and do the
Yeah.
thing for. But it's a lot of culture and a lot of talk needs to happen in those areas. So I decided to kind of, step back a little and just focus on, for this residency, on things that I've already been kind of doing that pertain to land. And obviously, here is I'm just getting tons of inspiration just with all the views.
Right. I was
And
going to say, especially a healing, the land. I mean, with this always shifting, it's kind of like a create and destroy balance, and so I think that you doing this, it's kind of like the icing on the cake, with the cherry.
right.
We
And
want the cherry too.
and yeah, and I've been telling everyone, when I got to the Big Island, I was trying to finish up tons of work, even on the plane ride over here, just really trying to knock out all this stuff. And I was very stressed and everything. But I came in pretty late, at night, and I wasn't able to see anything because it was so dark. And then I woke up in Hilo, uh and when I started to look outside, I felt this very, like, peacefulness just kind of come over me, and kind of
Mm.
calmness, and I wasn't really worried about anything. So I feel like that whole, I don't know what it is, like, because I mentioned it to some of the locals, and they kind of laugh, and they're like, yeah, it kind of goes slower here, around here. And I don't know if that was it, but I really want to capture that essence of just the peacefulness, the calmness that's
Mm.
here. And it might be just, maybe just the idea of Hawaii. I mean, when I was telling everyone, oh, I'm going to Hawaii, everyone's like, oh, I'm jealous, like, you know. But I
Well,
think
yeah, yeah,
there's
and
something here, though, that people
yeah.
don't really, like, you won't feel it until you're here. And that's sort of the essence I want to capture and put forward
Mm.
to this project that we're doing. And again, I
Yes.
don't know how that looks like. Like I said, we're still kind of unpacking here right now. And we're going to be setting up, actually, in the room I'm in, and we're going to trying to get some recordings done here too.
That's
So
exciting because number one, you're in the art house, the famous art house, which is beautiful, and they've got good coffee down the road apparently. But what I love about this residency in NPAF is I don't know one interview. I mean, we've been interviewing for 8 years now, and you know, musicians, artists, painters, textile workers. I mean, feather makers. It's just feather masters, and everyone goes in with this idea of what they're going to do. And I think about 90% of the idea of what they want to do when they get to a residency changes, because it changes according to whatever it needs to change to for the artist, for the landscape, something changes. And I think it's wonderful that the NPAF doesn't go, well, you have to stick to exactly, nobody wants that in art. Nobody wants that, so it's beautiful. And I love the fact that you are connecting with the elders there to that. I think those kinds of conversations are important. It's in all cultures to have these conversations.
Absolutely. And and I don't know how this residency was supposed to happen years ago. And I think the first time the first year it was canceled because the some of the COVID
Yeah.
procedures and all that. So that was just, we couldn't come during that time. Last year they had, the Maui fires, and
Hmm.
after speaking with kind of their situation, because we one of the things that we did have lined up for us is at the Maui Arts and Cultural Center. We were going to perform there, and after hearing the elders and sort of like the community sort of saying, I just lost my house. I don't think I'm going to go to a performing arts show.
Right, right.
And it was just a bad time. So we postponed it a year. So we didn't come last year. And then finally this year, it seems like, it felt a little more, safe to come, and people were a little more back on their feet. And, and
Mm.
I think it's just we were very careful in how we would approach all of this. And yeah, the volcanoes parks have been really amazing at understanding all of those things.
Hmm. That's
And
wonderful.
there were really, yeah, there were serious stuff. And I'm glad everything was taken very seriously. And like I said, they've been amazing to work with, just because um, there's a ton more thought on all the decisions being made. And
Sure.
so yeah, it's just remarkable, because you could work with anyone else and everyone just wants to execute it and knock it out,
Yeah, no, I hate that. I hate that. You've got to have integrity. And it kind of feels like you're supposed to do this album there. It just kind of feels like all the forces came together. And when you're talking about, land healing of the land, and I kind of feel like that was, it just was, it's what it's supposed to be, you know?
Right. It just feels good, and it's coming together
Mhm.
naturally. And yeah,
That's
I love
awesome.
that about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I do want to ask you about South Africa, because that's where I grew up. It was in South Africa and Kenya. And I see that you did an album out there, and um, that's just cool.
Yeah, yeah. It was really amazing.
Is it Kindred Spirits is the album, right? Kindred
Yeah,
Spirits.
yeah. And it's with, our sort of the original trio that I had. We basically created sort of shells, songs, different songs, like more of just the basic skeleton of the song. And before we went there, we sent it over to a gentleman. Name is John Lindemann. He's like a two-time Grammy-winning producer, and also a percussionist named Dan Corbally, who runs the WOMAD Festival in South Africa. So it was a really neat set of guys that were just kind of wanting to collaborate. And so we sent these sort of skeleton songs over, and they chose the artists. They found, all of these South African artists, indigenous even, and they had like jazz vocalists. They had sort of spoken word poetry guys. All these artists come out and contribute to this album that we did, and it features like 6 or 7 South African artists that are all local within the area of
Mm-hmm.
sort of like Johannesburg and Soweto. And it was just amazing. So when we got there, we flew in, we went to John Lindemann's home, and we started listening to all of these songs for the very first time. And we were like, whoa, what is this? This is like amazing. And we got to meet some of the artists too. And I think something that was really beautiful was there's this song, and I think it's probably the most popular on the album. It's called Grandma's Song, and it was made by the song started off with Alex Holiday, who's a Navajo, who was actually a part of Build a Band back in
Oh, okay.
2018. So she went through that program, and so it was fun to like reconnect with her. And she's doing a lot of things. I believe she's studying to be a nurse right now, but also she has like different bands she's working with. She's still
Oh,
doing
cool.
like all kinds of types of coaching and indigenous knowledge and all that. And so yeah, she's basically like an ambassador. So I asked if she wanted to join us and go to South Africa, and she was like, "Oh, I would love to." And she basically created a song about her grandmother. The song basically translates to like, "I love the way my mother fixes her hair. I love her jewelry," and all of these things. And the coolest thing happened when they got the South African artist. Her name is Nalesiwe Mount Sweni, and I believe she's from like Zulu tribe and another sort of South
Okay.
African tribe.
Natal area. What's KwaZulu?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so she started adding lyrics without even hearing Alex's lyrics, and she started talking about like the empowerment of women, and
Wow.
it just kind of came together. And when we like net we short term we call her Nelly, her nickname. So Nelly and Alex were able to both meet at John Lindemann's house, and they heard this song that they worked on together, and none of them ever heard it fully. And it was like one of the most like very like memorable moment that I had almost in my entire life. It was just like there was some type of magic that was going on, and the idea of sort of two matriarchs there standing very strong was just super powerful, being in their presence. And they were like immediately sisters. Like the moment they saw each
That's
other, they were
cool.
like hugging, and they went all around the cities together. And it was a really nice thing to see. And the one of the things was, I had no idea sort of the culture and where women stand in the South African culture. It's
Mm.
not high, it's not up there, but
Nope.
uh we would have these sort of talks about woman empowerment, but they had to do it secretly. It couldn't be publicized or anything like that. So we would be like under the theater, and Nelly and Alex would there be, advocating for women, and people from the government even showed up just to listen in and to hear it. And so it was really like it it was amazing. It was beautiful. And when we played at the WOMAD festival, they did grandma's song there, and there was like half of the people there that I could see in the audience were just in tears. They were like because there
Oh,
was two women just standing strong and really singing out. And everyone was like, wow, this never happens, and it was just sort of a great cross culture, meeting that we had. And I was just so happy to be a part of it. And, that I lift that moment up really high during that trip, because
mm.
that was needed. And it was, we made some type of impact on a local level, with Nelly and Alex going to these universities and these schools and really talking
Oh,
about
that's awesome.
the placement of women in,
Mm-hmm.
in South
It is
Africa.
difficult. It's
Yeah.
difficult because you've got so many different cultures and also very mixed, and when we got there, it was in the 80s,
Yeah.
I was still a kid, because we went from Kenya to England to South Africa different times. And um, at that point, so apartheid was going on at that point when we arrived. And it wasn't just, white versus black. It was, or
Mhm.
anybody of color, right? It was
Right.
also against women. Women were not allowed to go to certain places. Just, and we got kicked out. My mom and I got kicked out of a restaurant because this was men only. It
Mm.
was and it's and then, the different African tribes, the women, they are strong matriarchs and they run the tribes. Trust me.
Right. 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 Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't mess with them, yet it's a very complex it's so complex to talk and to share and to yeah, but these conversations have to be, they have to be had. So, it's like what you're doing in Hawaii with the elders there. It's these conversations are so important to have, but it's requires a lot of listening too, to see where someone is coming from, because you don't want any kind of anything negative. This is about lifting up, not down.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, and it's kind of it's interesting to see, like, it's music that I love, and
yeah.
and music is the reason why I'm able to go a lot of places. But there's also this side of this music thing where, we really talk about like culture and, different problems we're all facing, and it's sort of a, I guess it's like sort of almost like a base for I guess it's a way that I can really go out there and, be able to be sort of like somewhat of a cultural ambassador,
Mhm.
and but also being very, sensitive to whoever I'm collaborating with at the time. And so it's like, yeah, music is there, but it's like there's something always way deeper that
Deeper.
I'm dealing with.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's a language, right? That's a language so that their problems can get solved and healing can happen. Delbert, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. I'm so excited for your residency and can't wait to hear the album. Yeah, that will be fun. So that is so exciting that you're going to record it there. So I'm very excited. I'm glad to have you here, and I want everyone to know, go to delbertanderson.com. The link is in the episode notes. You can listen to his music on the site. Also, go to Spotify. But the best thing is to buy the album, right? Instead, just saying, streaming is the one thing, but purchasing the albums. What's the best outlet for people to buy your music?
It would be delbertanderson.com. All the
Okay.
proceeds, 100% goes to the artist. So that would be the
Oh,
best way. Yeah.
yay! Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Delbert.
Thank you.